Hi folks, this is a very spontaneous video, but I think I want to say what I want to talk about this while it's on my mind. Um, I just want to talk about mental health and the modern world, particularly in the context of the modern world. Um, I think mental health problems have always been with humanity, and I think there's more awareness today of them, which is a good thing. You know, they've always been there. People have always had clinical depression. People have always had a range of other problems, anxiety, and over the generations, these things have been dealt with in different ways. I mean, approached in different ways, if at all. And I think if we compare today to the past, I think today there is more understanding and probably more compassion as well. So that's definitely a good thing. But I also suspect that there are things that we face today that people didn't necessarily face in the past. Now, I don't want to be misunderstood. There are horrors in the past that this generation, and I'm thinking within the context of developed countries, have never had to go through. Um, I'm watching now the film Stalingrad from 1993, and the absolute hell those soldiers on both sides and civilians must have went through in the Eastern Front of World War II. It's just hard to comprehend. The film's actually very powerful. I'll show you the cover. No copyright infringement intended. This is not my intellectual property. It's a German film, and it covers quite a lot of the mental health side of it, like the you can see even sort of signs of PTSD and so on coming through, and it's a powerful film. It was critically acclaimed, and I can see why. First time I've ever watched it. But anyway, not to detract. The point I'm making is, of course, there are things in the past that we cannot comprehend. We can't compare to. Um, but I think the modern world can be a very stressful place, and I think that there are things that are deemed to be progressive for humanity, which can be, but can also be detrimental. Take, for example, social media. Now, I don't believe that social media is an entirely bad thing. I think it's good for keeping in touch with friends and family. It's good for spreading campaigns, that sort of thing. But it's also clearly got a very, very toxic side as well. Um, I think people know what this is. I don't really need to go into huge details. It's kind of stating the obvious. Me personally, I find that I've been quite unlucky when it comes to technology. I've had a lot of problems over the years. Um, I've had viruses on this laptop. I've been a victim of hacking before. I've had a lot of problems. I'm not saying more than others, but enough to be stressful. And I find that when things don't work, I'm not a perfectionist, but I do find that I don't have a huge amount of patience with things not working. Um, like if you pay for something and it messes up, or if you go shopping and let's say you're trying to get um let's say, for example, you're trying to get photographs developed and then they don't work and you have to start all over again in those self-service machines. Now, these things on their own are not a big deal, but when things add up, it can really increase blood pressure. It can really be very frustrating. And I find that sometimes other people's lack of empathy, other people's lack of trying to understand why people are frustrated about things only adds to it. I mean, another issue, particularly in this country, is transport. And I've traveled around the world. Britain's not unique with this problem, but this country, when commuters have to put up with delay after delay, increasing prices. I mean, Southern Rail, for instance. I can only imagine the stress people living in the southeast go through, having to put up with that crap all the time. And then the CEO, on his huge salary, he doesn't have to, wait for hours on a platform and put up with constant delays and all the rest of it. I think generally in this country, railway companies have a crap attitude to customers. I think they're just very. The problem lies in a lack of empathy. It lies in just a lack of understanding, and I think we need to really consider how this sort of stress is detrimental to quality of life. I mean, I think Britain is one of the most high pressure countries in Europe in terms of work pressure, in terms of life pressure. I think there's a lot of reasons for that. Partly, we're quite an urban society. At least 50% of Britons live in cities or big towns. So we're a pretty urban society. Therefore, I mean, if you look at urban society, South Korea, again, it's an urban society, and I'd say the pressure there is even greater. And Japan, China increasingly so as well. I mean, my goodness, the sort of work pressure that my Chinese friends go through, the long, long hours some of them have to work. Um, when we think about human happiness, I think it has to be more than materialism. It has to be more than the size of a country's GDP. I mean, that's important. It's important in terms of obviously the bigger a GDP is, the greater the potential for building the infrastructure and the institutions that provide for the basic amenities of life, healthcare, um, justice, education, all these important things. But I think it is so very important to breathe sometimes, to just get away from modern technology, from the modern world, just take a moment to ourselves and just breathe. Just um, because there are so many things out there that have the potential to stress people out. And I think there's very few people who are genuinely very calm, serene people. And, best wishes to them. But I think most people, particularly in this country, we have a saying in Britain, keep calm and carry on. But particularly now in this Brexit environment, there is a lot of strong views about a lot of things. I mean, I've got strong opinions on a lot of things, and sometimes I have to drag myself away from the news. I mean, I can never totally avoid it because it's like in my blood, I'm interested in what is happening in the world, in this country and in the world. I can't totally divorce myself from that. And sometimes I wish I could. Sometimes I wish I was apathetic. Sometimes I wish I didn't care. That's just the way I am. So I have to remind myself, Nathan, for goodness sake, just getting angry about this subject isn't necessarily going to help people who are suffering or whatever it is. Um, I think a lot of the time people create stress for other people because they don't empathize, they don't put themselves in other people's shoes. And we're all guilty of this. I mean, I'm sure I've been guilty of it at times. I'm not coming out with this holier than thou thing. I'm sure I've been guilty of it at times. And I'm not the most patient person in the world. Yesterday, for example, I bought a DVD in CEX, a discount electronics store, and the girl behind the till just seemed to be taking her good old time, and there was a long queue, and it was a hot day, and I admit I got a bit cranky about it because I'm thinking, come on, can you not see the queue? It was just bad service. I mean, she wasn't rude, but just like, take your good old time there. So bad service definitely winds people up. But then again, I've been a server, I've worked behind a till, I also know that side of it. Um, I think people just need to find little areas to relax. And obviously, if you are in a sort of job that's very demanding, very difficult. And I think parents, particularly, are under huge pressure. You know, when I look at my brother and his wife, I have a lot of respect for, you know, what that takes to be a parent. Very, very demanding, very time consuming, and it's very important that you know what you're getting yourself in for. Um, I just think the modern world can be a very stressful place. There was actually I came across a survey in the Eye, and the question was how people saw previous decades compared to now. Did they think life was better? Did they think it was about the same, or did they think things have improved? Interestingly, the 1990s came up on top, not the 60s, the 90s. The other decades done relatively well, but almost universally there was a feeling that things have declined. Whether that's because of the divisions over Brexit, whether it's because of other factors, I don't know, but that's significant. I'm no Luddite. I think technology can be a wonderful thing. I think it can definitely. I mean, we know how much we need it and how much we appreciate it when it's gone, like when you lose Wi-Fi or whatever. Um, and sometimes you have to say, you have to sort of think, well, whoa, we really do rely on this. It's like, what about the time before the internet, i.e., or before social media, i.e., before circa 2004? Life without that stuff, it's almost hard to remember now. Um, and yet there must be a reason why people remember the 90s with nostalgia. Now, like every survey, I'm sure it has its flaws, but I wonder could the influence of social media be part of that? I also think the fact there is so much interest in reality TV, trash TV, is a very cynical indictment of society that people need to look at other people's broken lives to get their little kicks. It's very sick, and it's. I mean, I am very pleased the Jeremy Kyle show is gone, but it's not alone. There's other trash out there. Um, I think we just need to respect ourselves, give ourselves time. It's time to relax, whether that be 10 minutes, whatever it is. Go for a walk, listen to relaxing music, um, and also try and empathize with others, but also stand up for ourselves. I think people who are too passive, that's very unhealthy to me because if you're too passive and you're constantly the one to be saying sorry or um, you know, people unfortunately are going to walk over you. It shouldn't be that way. People shouldn't take advantage of others in that way, but unfortunately, that's the world we're in, and they do. So being a little bit hard edged, a little bit tough minded, I think is also very important because unfortunately there are selfish gits out there who really don't care about other people, and you know they will get to you if you let them. By the way, gits I mean male and female in that context. You know, you see them just selfish people who don't consider others. It's just very, I find it very galling. That's the way it is. And you know, we're all human. We all have our faults. I've got my faults. I can have a very wicked temper sometimes. I'm pretty good at hiding it, but I can. Um, I'll leave it there. Let me know your thoughts. Mental health, um, dealing with a modern world, dealing with people. What are your thoughts?